This video is going to talk about our code review process in OpenMRS, both from the perspective of somebody who is submitting a patch for code review and what we as core code reviewers go through, and ideally what somebody that is not a core code developer can help us with. Now, why does OpenMRS do code review? We do it for multiple reasons, but the most important of which is code quality. We have a very important mandate with OpenMRS of keeping track of patient information, and we need to make sure that the code is doing its job and doing its job right. We can do this by putting a second pair of eyes onto every bit of code that goes into OpenMRS, and hopefully we're able to catch 90% of mistakes before they're out in the wild. Now, as a developer, if you were going to submit code to OpenMRS, you would first find a ticket, you would claim it, and start working on it. Once you are complete and you're ready, you would create a patch from that, and that patch file is just your changes that we're going to look at. So we have a wiki page on how to create patches, but it's very simple. You simply create a patch. I'm going to save it to my test patch. I don't want this file because it was just something I was playing around with. I choose project so that anybody can apply this easily, and I can finish, and now I've got a text file on my system that is just the changes I've made. So I would take this back to the ticket and I would attach this file. After I do that, it's important to click the Request Code Review button. That's how it gets into the queue of things for people to look at. Now that queue of code review tickets is listed in multiple places. This is one of the quick queries I did up to find all current tickets in all projects that are needing to be code reviewed. As an example, I'm going to take trunk 1934. This one does not have any official code review going, but it has been reviewed multiple times. There's been a conversation going on, several patch files by Aja. So let's take his latest patch, which appears to be March 24th. We'll save that to our system, and this is the patch file that his IDE generated. So we can look at this, make comments if we need to, push it back to him quickly. But seeing as how this has gone through a few revisions of that, let's go ahead and load this up into Crucible, our source code reviewing app, and make some comments. So source.openmrs.org contains both the source code viewer and the review tool. The fastest way to create a review off of a patch file is just clicking the code review button. And we are doing a pre-commit review, and we choose this one so that Crucible displays it correctly. If we didn't choose it, then it just shows up as a standard text file, which isn't any better than viewing it in our editor on our machine. So this looks like it chose the correct place to anchor the patch file. So it's anchored to trunk. That's where it created the patch from. So it's important to edit the details before starting it so that we can set the title. So this ticket was add, it's best to just copy and paste. putting the ticket ID in here. We'll be sure to get them linked between Crucible and Jira. That's basically it. Darius is already added as a second reviewer. I can add several other users if I want, but it's really unnecessary. We require 2 pairs of eyes on tickets before they get into trunk, and I'll just go overboard just to show you how to do that. So we've got a title, we've got some reviewers, so we can click Start Review. And we can browse through the different files here and make comments. The main thing we're looking for are the quick fixes, style, and any duplication of methods that's already in OpenMRS. So running down that list, if we have a service, we want to make sure there's an authorized annotation. If it's a read-only method, we want to make sure there's a transactional read-only annotation on it, which we have down here. Once we look at the services, we want to make sure there are not any null pointer exceptions that are going to be possible. So we can see that he's simply updating some of these methods. And check his mapping file and they're fine. Whenever there's any Liquibase change sets, we need to make sure there's a unique ID, there's a precondition, and a helpful comment. All of his change sets use the Liquibase XML, which helps if we ever need to revert these. The next thing we want to look for is make sure there are unit tests for these new service methods he's adding. So we have 2 new service methods and a modified one. So really we should have multiple unit tests in here. And it's always nice to run through this, make sure that the content here is actually validating what the should is. So we have a should retire source on the retire HL7 source. So we have the retire HL7 source. This really needs a should method. So let's go ahead and put this here. So this method before we do this, let's go ahead and see if I'm just missing it in the lines here. So there's no @should up in his Java doc. So let's add this as a comment for Aja to look into. He only had one new Hibernate TAO method, he's doing correctly. So the standard test data set here is what's run before every unit test. We want to avoid changing this if at all possible, because this will affect all other tests and modules that are depending on it. he's only adding in a required field and then one new source, which is fine, which has a new incremented source ID. Controllers are usually more difficult to look through. Matching them up with the JSP. In the JSP, one of the more important things to look for is make sure all free text is actually encoded in a Spring message. So he has added that here. You'll see this new HL7 source, retire HL7 source. There's an extra space here. A few minor changes. It's important to look for major stylistic differences between OpenMRS and the developer. We like to keep a consistent look throughout OpenMRS because that makes it a lot easier to scan through. If you're having to deal with 5, 10, 20 different styles of developers, it makes it very difficult. There's the general Java principles of naming, lowercase variable names, lowercase method names, uppercase object names that are important to look through. Those are very minimal usually. Any new files that are added must have the OpenMRS license header. It's an important thing to look for as well. And of course, when adding new service methods, this is the most important place to have a method comment. And he has all parts of that Java doc covered. He's got a sentence, he's got all the parameters matched, and he has a return. What he doesn't have is the does not have any it should annotations for the unit test that he added. He's got his at shoulds here, which is nice. Some new developers aren't familiar with our at should unit test plugin that we have for Eclipse, which actually makes it a lot easier to generate our unit test method names off of these at should parameters. So a quick glance to see if this at should matches up with the unit test name and unit test annotation. Will confirm whether he's using that, whether he understands the paradigm we're trying to create. I believe it was this one with true included diagram. With true included diagram. Yeah, so he's got his unit test method matching up with his at should. So there are very minor changes here, but I think if I was applying this patch right now, I would simply make a comment that said, I will take care of these. So that the developer knows I'm I'm marked as the author, so I'm not able to complete this review. So let's change this. back to Aja. And add myself as a reviewer. So now I'm a reviewer. Let's refresh this so I can see the right button up here. So now I've completed my review, and if this was some larger patch, or I was wanting to wait on a second confirmation before applying it, I would simply complete my review, and I've marked it as complete. My job is done. If I were to request changes from Aja, if I think that there's sufficient work for him to work on before or after or during any more reviewers, I need to come back to the ticket and click the rework needed button and add a comment to Aja saying that there is a few things that he needs to do. And if I was to apply this patch, I have a committed code option.